Hey Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Lester Moses, who is a senior customer solutions manager at Amazon Web Services. Lester, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
Well, hello. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I am excited to get into what you do and all the work that you're doing. Obviously, we have connected and worked with a lot of guests from Amazon. So it's always good to hear the stories and where people are coming from working together. But before we dive into all the things you've been doing and also the transitions of work as well, give us a little background, a little bit more about where you're from and where you grew up.
Yeah, sure, Paul. Thank you. So I was born in Guyana, South America. It is a small country on the northern part of the South American continent. We are a part of the Caribbean community. So I grew up in Guyana. I actually lived there until I was 11 years old. And
Okay.
then I did not move to the US like most other Caribbean folks. I moved to Africa. My
Well, you
my
had me for a
mom,
second.
yeah,
that's,
yeah,
that's a
my
big shift.
mom, that's a big shift for sure. My mom got a job teaching in Botswana, and so I moved from Georgetown, Guyana, which is the capital, to a village in Botswana called Serowe, and finished all my high school and junior high in Botswana. So
Wow.
um, Guyana, born and bred, then moved to Africa, Botswana, finished all my high school, and then I moved back to Guyana for about 3 years before I actually moved to the United States. And I touched down in Florida when I moved. So definitely lots of different perspectives culturally, and got to see a bit of the world while I did it. So
Mm. And that's first off, I want to say that's out of the guests. You're the first guest that has mentioned the transition to Africa. Coming from the Caribbean, a lot of them have mentioned they've gone over to New York, or they were definitely rooted in Toronto, Canada, right? Or,
yeah,
a little bit of them, migrated into Florida. But to go to Africa is
yeah.
totally different. So you're the first. I want to commend you on that. And your mom making that move over there. But how did the move to Africa impact you? Like you're coming from the Caribbean and all of a sudden you're heading to Africa. Like that's a
Yeah.
whole different lifestyle.
It is. That was a very humbling move, to be honest, because I grew up in the capital, so in the Caribbean, I got accustomed to certain things. And when we moved to Botswana, we moved to the oldest village in the country, and so um, you had to walk to school. There were no public buses coming into where I lived.
Mm.
You had to fetch water to get water to where you needed it. You didn't always have power. So it was a very humbling experience. We didn't have computers at our school because we were in a village. So throughout the time that I was there, it was a very good experience. It got me in touch with the earth, so to speak. Farming, you saw families, how people survived maybe years gone that we're not accustomed to now. So I think you don't take things for granted as much. So that's really what I appreciated about that experience.
If I may ask, how was the schooling? That's I know that obviously a lot of the guests have said something about going to Toronto, New York. So they talked about the difference in regards to schooling coming from the Caribbean, but the schooling of going from where you're from all the
Yeah,
way out to Africa.
yeah. No, good question. Schooling was actually surprising. Botswana is one of the few countries in Africa that found diamonds after the British left. So they got independence, the British left, and then they found the diamonds. And luckily, they have spent that money really well and they poured it into education. So they
Good.
have one of the, in my opinion, one of the most ambitious education systems for their kids. They really push you as far as you can go. And so in high school, I was doing all three sciences, additional mathematics, business, design and technology. Like they push you as far as you can go. So
Mm.
in terms of education, yes, we didn't have the computer science, but we had that core foundation
Good.
that was there. So
Good. Good.
they beat you in school, so your parents couldn't do anything to save you.
We
That
talking
helped.
about those days now. Gonna beat
That,
you right in the middle of class.
that helped too. They beat you when you're late for class at the gate. Then you get to class and your teacher beats you again, and it's
Oh
just
no.
ripple effect all day because you're late to every class. So
I see why you moved back. You were like, I'm not going to college out here.
mhm.
Okay, okay. Well, what does your Guyanese culture mean to you? Like, how does that drive you in your everyday life?
Growing up in Guyana, one of the things that stands out to me is how we we're so good together as a people. Like we have all these challenges um, in the Caribbean. Because when you think about the Caribbean, we are in a place where you had slave masters running plantations where the majority of the population were slaves.
Mm,
Then you bring in other people after slavery is over. You bring in Indians, you bring in Chinese, you bring in, all these different types of people, and you have the native people there. And we're expected to survive in that environment. And when you think about it, that's a lot of mental pressure that people in the Caribbean manage every single day. But at the same time, we're some of the most laid back,
yeah.
welcoming people
Yep.
that
Yep.
you will find anywhere. And so, that balance is what I love about my culture. Um, we continue to persevere as a people. Yes, we have ups and downs. We clash sometimes, but uh, the majority of Caribbean people around the world, we come together wherever we are. So, um,
Mm.
being from
Uh,
Guyana, that's really what it means, and the Caribbean, that's what it means to me. Like my culture, um, everything that we've been through, and we're still continuing to persevere.
that's something that a lot of the previous guests have mentioned. Like they were like when they were in, for example, corporate America, and they found someone else from the Caribbean. It was like finding like your cousin. You're like, hey, hold on, you're from Jamaica? Oh, you from Montserrat? And it's
Yep.
like a common denominator of joy and happiness because the Caribbean culture is already vibrant within itself,
Yeah.
right? So to be connected to another individual that potentially has that same type of energy, it's
Yeah.
already like rejuvenating in a sense to a lot of them, especially walking into an environment where they might have felt uncomfortable or maybe not even welcome, but to be
Mhm.
next to someone that shares that same type of timeline or even um, connection
Mhm.
is always so beautiful to watch and to witness. Now, your childhood, from Guyana to Africa, like, and then coming back to Guyana, I'm really curious right now. Like, what was like what's one of the most memorable moments in your childhood, like that inspired you to pursue the career that you're in right now?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that stands out when I think about a memorable moment is I was 8 years old, or seven. A song had just come out. It's called Little Black Boy, and the singer was from Trinidad. His name is Gypsy.
Mm,
And I remember specifically my mom calling me this. I was playing, I was a kid. We were at some kind of function. And she called me and she said, "Hey, listen to the words of this song." And the words of the song say, "Little black boy, go to school and learn. Little black boy, show some concern. Little black boy, education is the key to get you off the street and rid of poverty." And the song was basically a conscious uh, observation of what was going on around us. And her asking me to listen to that song, what that song said to me is, hey, you need to be more assertive and more observant about what's happening around you, and who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what has led me down the path that I'm in today. So
Mm-hmm.
career-wise, yes, I work for AWS, but I think as I grew up and I learned about becoming somebody, um, for me, it's not achieving one goal. It's not becoming the CFO or the CIO of, or the GM for a particular group or whatever it is, the CEO. For me, it's figuring out how to build something that will last generations.
True.
What do I
Very true.
mean? Like when we were slaves, Black people, when they were slaves, they built countries, nations, empires that still stand up today. But what they were building was the infrastructure that other people use to build generational wealth. So my goal career-wise is bigger than a traditional career. Everything I do in my life, for my family, for my career, is pointed towards how do I create the infrastructure to make this continue forever after I'm dead, 1,000 years from now. That's where I want to focus. So that's
Mm-hmm.
how I think about a memorable moment and how it translates to how I think about the world today and how the direction I want to go in.
You sounded like the artist himself right there. I don't know. You could probably be on the remix.
Hey, it's Calypso.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the good thing about our Caribbean culture, a lot of that reggae music, right? That conscious music, it really had a deeper meaning.
Oh
It
yeah.
was music that spoke on topics that really affected us as people, not just from the Caribbean, but just people around the world.
Oh yeah.
And listen to you kind of, recite back those words from the song "Little Black Boy." It makes me think of like even like Bob Marley and the work that he did in his conscious music that would make people even today listen to that music. Even this "Little Black Boy," that's a song that every little black boy,
Yeah.
brown, should be able to hear this song and be like, oh, you know what? It means something. And I'm so happy that your mother was able to kind of like, look, you need to listen to this. Because to some of us as kids, we just listen to music. We're like, all right, it's just a song. We dance into it, right? But when you
Yeah.
really dig in and listen to what was said, it still stands today. And that goes to what you were talking about, building the infrastructure that could last even after. So even that song, Little Black Boy, as a child, you heard it, it still makes sense and resonates even in today's society.
Definitely. Music is something you learn from forever. I just learned 2 weeks ago Bob Marley's song "War."
Mm,
The words of that song is from an address that Haile Selassie did in 1963 at the United Nations.
let's go. Let's go.
When I Googled that and I looked at that speech, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. The word for word, the words of that song that Bob Marley did is from that speech. So
Look at
music
that.
is
Come on.
powerful.
It's the little gems inside that
Yeah.
that people wouldn't understand or see at first, but if you dig deeper, you definitely would get that.
Oh yeah.
Now, when I think of your transitions, right? You went from Guyana to Africa, right? And then you went back to Guyana, and then you ended up in the United States. And you said Florida was where you ended off, right? You go into like
Florida.
how did you adapt to the U.S. culture now, right? You move from various different places. Like, what was like the biggest obstacle coming to the States?
Um, so first of all, I didn't want to come to the United States.
Oh, where were you trying to stay?
I wanted to stay in Guyana. I
Okay.
took my parents' advice and I came. Um, that's the short version. But when I got
They did like
here,
you need to go. You
yeah,
need to go. You gotta get a big job, make a lot of money.
yeah. When I got here, you know, obstacles kept happening. 3 weeks after I got to the U.S., My dad had a major heart attack. He was out for 4 months in the hospital, four
Wow.
months. Um, I got a job a month later after we touched down. And so after that, I realized everything was on me. So I was working at a hospital in the ER as patient access. Basically, because I had a high school diploma and in Guyana, I was able to talk my way into a job teaching for 6 months and then into the banking system. That was gold on my resume. So I got into the hospital role doing patient access, which is basically patient registration.
Mm.
So immediately, um, I was working, I had to pay all the bills. So that's number one. When I tried to get into school, they told me, oh, you haven't lived in the US for more than a year. You're going to be considered an international student. So I knew right away I couldn't go to school. So I just kept my head down. I kept working for about a year. And then as soon as that year was up, I applied and got back into school.
Mm.
Back then, they were selling student loans like hotcakes. They don't explain the detail. You just
Sign on the dotted line.
sign on the dotted line, and everything is taken care of. So I would work during the day, go to school at night, um, and even that was tricky because they didn't offer some of the courses that I needed at nighttime. So I would have to figure out how to get through the course by meeting people in the day class to understand what they were doing
Oh
to
no.
to get it through.
Shout out to you, Lester. You found it. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, definitely,
You were
definitely.
like tapping on somebody's shoulder, like, look, I know you went to the morning class a little earlier. Could you just give me the update?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a lot of information to be passed on.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But you figure it out. The next thing I noticed is there was nothing happening at the school in terms of companies coming to find students for internships for jobs. It was not happening. It was happening for the day students. It was not happening for the night students. And the way that it happened was very, I guess there's a process for everything, and I wasn't familiar with the process. So um, I started.
You didn't get the memo.
I didn't get the memo. So I started an accounting club. I was studying accounting. I started an accounting club. I started recruiting people in the night class who were in a similar position. I was like, hey, what are you going to do after school? Like after you're done with your degree, where are you going to go work? And so we started building a team and started writing letters to local organizations, inviting them on campus after work in the evenings to do talks with the different students on different things. So if classes ended at 7 or 8, the event started at 8:05.
Let's go.
So that's how, and the obstacles kept popping up. But after work, you got to get to school, and then I don't know when you study, but you got to wake up and go to work again 7 a.m. the next day. But you got to make it happen. So
I gotta give it to you. I like what you said right there about how you started writing letters as a group to get individuals from corporation. Because you're right, a lot of those events take place during the daytime,
mhm.
afternoon, lunch times and stuff. And if you're working, then it doesn't work for you, right?
Yeah,
So you're missing out on that. But again, this is you at that point in your life saying, I have a voice and I want to be heard and I want to be seen, right?
mhm.
And you took it upon yourself and upon, to kind of engage and inspire the group to join you in writing these letters.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming those letters all paid off at some point in time. You were able to get into the job of your liking at some point in time.
Yeah, let me maybe expand on that a little bit more. So the first year we had like 5 or 6 companies that came to the school because of those letters. The next year, through one of those same contacts, we found out that the IRS does a program called VITA every year. And special organizations can actually run a VITA site to help the community. Now, what a VITA site is basically a group of people who are certified in tax to do taxes for the community as long as you meet a certain threshold. And we do it for free. We do it pro bono. So I said, hey, let's do it. I got my team. We got certified. I went to the school. I said, hey,
We're running a whole operation.
I want to bring the IRS to the school. Do I have your permission? We got the permission. We had a whole IRS site for the whole tax season ran at the school every Saturday and Sunday from January to April. That's when it's
Yeah.
tax season.
Yeah.
And so every weekend we did our training the holiday season before. Every weekend we would do taxes for the community, and that was my internship. Because remember, I was working full time.
Yeah, that's right.
That was my internship. I turned that opportunity into my own internship, and that's what I put on my resume because I couldn't stop working to go get a part-time job to get a traditional internship.
Yeah.
So
You
created my
created
own.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If you build it, they will come.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
If you write it, they'll read it.
They'll read it.
That's the new one right there. That's not congratulations on that. And it's very inspiring to hear that, especially when you're in your college years. Like, sometimes people think that it's things that are gonna be handed to them because you're at a university, right? You're like, well, there isn't a career fair coming up on the 5th. Sometimes students forget that there's still an opportunity for you to make the difference, and you to actually go out there. But again, you got to be vulnerable. You got to be open to people not responding back to you and not giving you those calls. Like you said, it started off with just 5 organizations, but then it just constantly grew. I'm hoping that the school still does it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, listen, this thing grew. So that year we attracted so much interest from the community. Another organization reached out saying, hey, we heard that you guys run a tax site at your school. Well, we lost grant funding because you guys pulled away some of our market. How about next year you come work for us?
Oh,
That went on
oh.
the resume too.
Okay.
So,
You're just racking up.
hey,
You see, this is why your parents told you to leave. They knew you had this skill set right here to make things happen. Make things happen. Like so, just out of curiosity, when it came to like after graduating, right? I know with your first job out, like what was like one of the biggest challenges in that out of college, in that first job?
yeah. Getting the first job was the first challenge because even though I was doing all that work in school, I was applying everywhere and nobody was taking me.
Bro.
Right? I was doing the normal application process, getting no hits. I found out that there was a networking organization called Alpha. It's the Association for Latino Professionals for America. And they have a conference every year. It's basically a diversity conference. And at those diversity conferences, you have lots of companies there. And that's actually a loophole of how diversity gets into these big corporations. So that's how I got my first job because I had to drive up to Orlando for that conference and find out which companies were there and do the networking and hand my resume, do interviews. And that's how I got my first job. Well, once I got into the job, you said you want to know what were the challenges that I met, right?
Yep.
Well, I'll give you an example. Not even from my first job. I'll give you an example from AWS. When this is after I got my MBA, because during my first job, Boeing was offering free education. I put my hand up, of course. I got my free MBA. But
You ain't turning stuff. I see the assignment.
after I got my MBA, like got my job at AWS, I get into the job, program manager for AWS supply chain. People think that, oh, only coders need to know, um, only coders need to know like these computer languages, Python, SQL, things like that. I got into that job and nothing that I had studied prepared me for what I had to deal with. I had to deal with SQL code every single day. and I was that skilled to do it. My first week, they gave me a 28-page SQL code to work on. Now, I wasn't the person coding, but I had to understand it and
Then
get
yeah,
familiar
yeah.
with it in order to get my job done. So I had to get skilled in that very quickly. So the biggest challenge, I think, when you're getting ready to go into corporate America is making sure you have very specific skills that are tied to that role that you can actually execute on.
Mm.
That's definitely something I want to advise people. So don't just think, oh, computer coding skills are just for programmers. No, you need to know it too. So get skilled, get those short certificate courses. Don't just rely on your degree if you're going through traditional school. What's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
important is knowing how to master those skills, whatever it is, whatever area that you want to practice in.
Navigating skill sets,
Mhm.
networking, that's a
Yep.
skill set. Sales, things like that are highly important, especially if you want to incline up that ladder.
Oh yeah.
What were like some of the things that, obviously people always say, especially as immigrants, first generation, second generation, our family members are always like pushing on us. You got to go to school. You got to go to school. Right. So
Yeah.
go to school, you get our degree. But then when you really think about it, some of the things that college did, one of the things that college didn't do was prepare us for some of the things that actually did happen in life. Like what
Mhm.
was like maybe one thing that college didn't prepare you for when you got out of college and you started working in like corporate America, for example?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Something that college didn't prepare me for. Again, to me, it's the skills because the life skills, hopefully you're getting that at home, but the skills of okay, let me answer this differently. Thinking big. College didn't prepare me to think big. Home didn't prepare me to think big. And when I say big, I mean really big. We hold ourselves back because we don't think big enough. When we think back to the people who were before us, we only think slavery. Well, before slavery, there was more. It's just that we can't connect to it.
Kings and
Uh,
queens.
right. But when you actually think about slavery, everything that America runs on, the infrastructure of America, was built by us. When you can accept that, you can really start thinking big about what it is, like what you can achieve as a person. And I, I think that held me back. Even though I was doing as much as I was doing, I feel like I could have done more because I just wasn't thinking big enough. And that is a skill that you need to practice because it's not just crafting an idea, it's figuring out, okay, how do you get from idea to execution? Thinking really big about something, knowing how to execute, knowing when to pull people in, knowing where to go to for help, knowing how to ask for help. Um, that is definitely something I would say is a skill that nothing prepared me for, and something that I continue to work on every day.
That is a very hard thing to do, to think big, especially when you're by yourself sometimes, right? And it's hard to even think big, especially as an immigrant background, where your family members are like, the big to them is just keep your head down and keep working, right?
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
deviate from what we worked hard to provide to you, right? So you're like, I got to just keep on. I got to keep doing this. I got to get the traditional job. I got to work here. I got to put my head down. Got to go to college. But then there's so many different avenues and lanes. But again, skill sets will help you open those doors. But
Yeah.
if you're constantly glued into one lane, then you're honestly gonna just keep driving on that road. There's so many different opportunities out there, and I'm hearing your story. I mean, it's inspiring to know that you created a lot of those opportunities for yourself, and it's still lasting, still standing, right? But you are right. Sometimes, it doesn't put college in a sense, or even it's like you said, home doesn't prepare you to think big. And I like how you're saying that, thinking big. Now, with does that go back to your immigrant background? Like, how does your immigrant background help you to excel in the different industries? You've been in the medical field. Um, Now you're with AWS, like working on these fields, right? Bowen as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
how has your immigrant background helped you excel in these industries?
Yeah. I think the diversity of where I come from helps me a lot because you're dealing with different kind of people all the time, you know. And when you learn how to deal with different kind of people and you learn how to interact with them, it helps you figure out how to engage people. So one of the skills that I use through that experience is learning how to just strike up a conversation and engage people. And I use this to my advantage because at Boeing, I realized that after I got the accounting job that I did all that work to do to figure it out, I
Mhm.
actually hated accounting. And I ran for the
Damn,
hills. I
damn.
ran for the hills, and I realized that I needed to start talking to people in order to get out of the job that I got. So I started networking. I started going to events, meeting people in the company, and through meeting those people, I started figuring out, okay, what kind of organization do you run? What skills do you need over there? What skills do I have that are transferable to fit that role? And I think I didn't really think of it as, oh, I studied accounting, so I'm an accountant. I thought of it as, well, I have these skills, and you said you need this. This is where I think I'd be a good asset for you. So you start focusing on, you don't focus on what you don't have, you focus on what you have. So understand what it is that you're good at, and then write it down. Write down the 5 things you're good at, write down the 5 things you're not good at, focus on the things you're good at, but figure out how to improve the other 5 things you're not
Yeah.
so good at. And through using that as well as engaging people, I started pivoting hard because I realized that finance and accounting was not the career that I wanted. Even though I studied
After all that.
after all that, I realized that's not what I wanted. Now, at that point, I was already in the middle of my MBA, and I switched my MBA major. I was doing a regular general MBA, and
Woo! You
I
switched
switched,
in the
I
middle.
switched it in the middle to a supply chain MBA because I looked at what was happening around me. I didn't have enough guidance to say, go do computer science, go to law school. I didn't have the guidance for that. So I said, okay, what am I good at? And so I picked supply chain because I'm decent at math. I'm not the best, but I'm pretty good. And I picked that. And so I used that to get into Amazon. And then once I was inside of Amazon, I learned all about data centers. I learned about how they build the cloud. I learned about how they started the company and nobody knew what the heck they were doing. Those skills that I was learning is exactly what I needed for the job that I'm in now. So the job that I'm in now, I work with a customer, Salesforce. Salesforce is my customer. They're a customer relationships management company. They're the company behind a lot of companies that you don't see. So, like when you go on your phone and you type in, "Oh, I want to buy a pair of sneakers," then all of a sudden you start seeing sneakers on your social media and all this. They're the people behind that. So, because I understood how data centers work and how the cloud worked and how to deliver capacity for large groups, that's a large company. They needed somebody to solve that problem. And I was right up that alley to solve that problem. I used that to get in the door. And then I pivoted hard because I realized, hey, I want to go into sales because I can maximize my my opportunity if I were in sales getting paid by commission. So I'm working directly with a salesperson now and getting the experience. I'm not in the job that I want to be, but I'm working directly with the salesperson, learning how they do it before I figure out, okay, when is the right time to jump now and get into the where I want to go, because I want to maximize my earning potential in sales. So I started off in accounting thinking, okay, this is what I want to do, because 2008, 2009, everybody was getting laid off except accountants and economists, to now where I'm like, okay, um, I'm in the cloud and I want to go to sales because I'm not super technical, but I need to get a certain level of depth. But
Okay.
that's how I pivoted throughout.
There's some throughout this whole time I'm listening on the fact that you're not afraid to move.
No,
You're not afraid to move. I mean, it goes back to your childhood. You have never in this conversation and you say, you know what, Paul, I'm not saying you weren't afraid at times, right? But it seems like you're moving with confidence. You're like, this is it. I got to make this happen. I got to go to this place. This place is going to help nurture me and give me the guidance that I need so I can then get to the next place. Like you already knew, you already 3 steps ahead of the game. You just, and you weren't afraid of transitioning in between each one to get to where you are, right?
yeah. Here's what I'll
That's a
tell you.
hard thing.
Here's what I'll tell you. Be confident, but once you get into that job and you feel a little bit uncomfortable, you're doing the right thing. Because when I got into my first job at Amazon, I met SQL. I didn't know computer languages. I met Python. I didn't know Python. You know, I was a little bit uncomfortable, but that's nothing that a week of YouTube videos or online courses can't fix.
Let's
So
go. Okay. Okay,
as
YouTube
long as you,
University. You're right.
yeah,
You're right. You're
as
right.
long as you got like a good amount of it covered, and just some of it that's making you uncomfortable, that's fine. Keep going.
Because you'll
Keep going.
figure it out as you go if you have a passion to figure it out.
Ask for help.
Yeah. Ask for help.
Ask for
I
help.
that's good. Yeah. I admire that because some people, some of our guests previously, they said that they stayed years at their company because they were afraid to leave, knowing that that what they were doing wasn't making them happy, or knowing
Mhm.
what they were doing wasn't their end all be all. But because they were afraid to move, because they were like, if I move, I could affect my finances, I could affect my family. It's and because you, as already talking from an immigrant background, second generation, they're like, I felt the pressure. If I failed, I was letting down my whole family, right? So it's like, do I make the move or do I just stay here and just keep my head down? But
Yeah.
again, you kept on moving. So shout out to you for that. And like all these amazing, amazing accomplishments. Like you've touched on a few of them already, but like any one major accomplishment that like you're like um that you could look at today, currently in your role right now, that you're like, I did that or I helped to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's see. I think I'm more proud of the things I've done outside of my career than the ones I've done in my career. Not that I think I'm a hard person to stop and say that was good, even though it might have been good. It's hard for me to be satisfied. I'm a very driven person, and I'm always asking what's next.
Mm.
Um, But if I had to pick one, let's see, definitely finishing my MBA while working full time at Boeing. That was challenging for sure, because MBAs are a little bit different to undergrad. Um, it's not the same, the level of work that you're required to put in goes up a few notches well.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And doing that while managing a career, managing family, because I was getting married at the same time, and succeeding in all of those things at the same time is tough. Because after you work, you're not just coming home to put in a few hours. You got to put in another 5, 6 hours. So you're up till 2 in the morning,
Yeah,
and then you got a 7 o'clock meeting the the next day. It takes another level of discipline to get that done. So I'm definitely proud of that. You know, yeah, that's career wise. Outside of my quote unquote career, I'm about to own my third property. And I got the first two and I didn't even stop to celebrate. And when I
Residential
stopped,
property?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
when you said property, I'm like, hold on, let me figure this out because you might have own like a big building or something.
no, not yet. Um,
Okay,
but the
I
third
like how you
one,
speak it into existence.
yep, yep, the third one the one I'm about to wrap up, once I get it, it's going to be a wedding venue. It's large enough.
Nice,
The
nice.
big space. So when I
In
stop,
Florida?
no, no, right here in Washington.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. When I stop and think of how far I've come, sometimes you need to do that. And I think we're in survival mode so much that we don't stop to appreciate what's happening around us. So sometimes you need to stop and just say, wait a minute, we started here and look at where we are now. Like, yeah.
Started from the bottom. Now we here.
So with all the
Yeah.
challenges that Caribbean people face, all the imposter syndrome, being the only
Oh,
one all the time in every class, in every corporate setting, you're always the only one. Yeah. So
mm. And you mentioned a key word, imposter syndrome, which is a very, very, very big word that has always come up in some type of interview that I've had with our previous guests. But before I get into that imposter syndrome, I just want to know, like, how do you foster like organic relationships, when you were in the corporate world, like when you felt like you were alone, when we were talking about the whole thing about being Caribbean and seeing like another Caribbean, like, oh my gosh, you're like my cousin, right? So like how'd you foster like those organic and relationships as you when you felt like you were alone?
yeah, I think it has to do with finding the humanity in other people. And when you're in a corporate setting, it's not always easy to do. But I think once you find a manager or a colleague or somebody in an affinity group that opens up just a little bit, once you sense that they care just a little bit, I think it's okay to ask a probing question to learn more. And probing questions are how you discover who people are. So don't be afraid to ask those probing questions to get people to share more. And once you ask probing questions, that's how you get people to open up. Don't be afraid to say, hey, can I have a one-on-one with you? I want to know what you think about this project. Or I'm working on this project and I want to get your take. I've done A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'm thinking about, the next move. Use that to your advantage. And once you get that time with people, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, you don't need an hour, you don't need a
Yeah.
half hour.
Yeah.
Put 15 minutes on that person's calendar, write out an agenda, and then engage. Engage, engage, engage. Ask questions. That's how you learn more about people and the human side of who they are. And I think that's the best way to figure out, hey, should I ask this person? Would they be willing to be a mentor or not? That's how you know. You engage them, and that's how I've a method that I've used to get more out of people.
I mean, it shows from those letters. It showed for them letters. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? That's true right there. You got to be able to engage. You got to be able to keep them interested in you, right? And there's a million people out there, a million people out there that I want to say are doing somewhat of the same thing or could do somewhat of the same thing. Obviously, they can't be you, right? But at the same time, we need to know that we're not the only ones that could do it. But
yeah,
again, speaking up, those skill sets that you talked about earlier, right? But now it brings us to that topic of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome. As you climb up that ladder, you start to question, am I really supposed to be here?
Yeah.
Is it my turn?
Hmm.
Is it time for me to step into this position? Am I
Yeah.
supposed to be sitting at this table with the rest of these individuals that most likely don't look like me and don't share the same common denominators as me? How
Hmm.
did Could you talk to us a little bit more about like maybe um a situation where you felt like that possibly and like how did you navigate through that?
Yeah, I'll actually talk about that, and I'll broaden it a little bit more for something that I've actually been dealing with, and I've been learning how to overcome. So the first thing I want to say is embrace the imposter. You know, when you embrace the imposter, you're getting more comfortable being uncomfortable. And
Okay.
that's something you need to learn how to do. You need to
Okay.
learn how to be a little bit uncomfortable. So when you feel uncomfortable, embrace that imposter. You should be there. You got hired because you're the best, right? Now, that interview process that these companies put you through, oh my God, it it's bar raising. The bar is really high. So once you're there, know that you're there because you're exceptional. All right.
Oh, that's good call. Good call.
Yeah. So that's number one. The next thing that I want to widen this into is race. I can't remember where I was reading it, but there was a research article that was talking to people about race. And one of the questions that they asked to Caucasian white people was, how often do you think about your race? And the results were very low. Like, so let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, the number was like 2. And
Wow.
then they asked the same question to Black people. How often do you think about race? And the number was 9. Now, why do I bring this up? We think about race all the time. And that time that we spend worrying about, hey, if a cop's behind me, is he going to pull me over? That's a lot of time. Like, white people don't have to think about this. So when you're in your moments alone and you're feeling imposter syndrome and you're feeling, oh, I'm 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 not good enough because of this, I'm not good enough because of that. What if you didn't have to think about those things? What would you be focused on? Where would you spend that time thinking? Like, that's an exercise I'm trying
That's
to do more and more.
that's deep.
Yeah.
How many
Because
times you like I'm thinking about how many times we drive and how many times you see a cop behind us and we're like, wait, hold up. Am I going too fast? Am I gonna get pulled over? So if you calculated that over the many years, that's hours and hours spent on putting negative thoughts in your head. That's one. Two, putting energy in an area that it doesn't need to go to. If you could take the 25 hours of this that alone over the course period of 10 years, I could only imagine someone building a new business, someone applying for a new job or, or actually building a relationship even stronger. But again,
so
wow, that's deep.
don't question who you are. The fact that you're here, you've done it,
Yeah,
and there's nothing you can do. So focus on that.
you're the person for the job.
Mhm.
And if you applied, you knew you were going to be that person for the job. You wanted to be that person for the job. So once you get it, just know now you got it, right? Don't look back and say, well, am I still the person for the job? Mind you, you saw the job description.
Yeah.
You saw clearly what you need to do right there. Talk to us about your position now, right? I know you're working for Amazon
Mhm.
Web Services. Like, could you tell us a little bit more about your role currently and what you do over there? I know
Yeah. So
it's a big role to play.
yeah, yeah.
You're like, hold on, Paul. Yep, you're right.
As a senior customer solutions manager, my focus is to be my customer's strategic advisor.
Uh-huh.
My job is to unblock problems for my customer. So I'm a problem solver.
Mm,
That's my job. It's very ambiguous. Like there are no parameters on how wide this job can get. So what I do is I strategically align myself with executives at my customer's company, and I try to understand the goals, the things that they want to focus on, all the initiatives that they want to do. So, for example, if a customer tells me, I want to create a new revenue stream, my job would be to understand my customer's business and then figure out how to use services at AWS to help
mm,
enable them to create a new product, to create a new type of revenue stream for their business or whatever problem it is that they're dealing with. My job is to help connect people to solve the problem. My job is to prioritize my customers. Amazon is customer obsessed. My job is to prioritize my customers' challenge internally to help them succeed.
mm.
That's what I do in a succinct uh, manner, like if I had to describe it.
And Amazon is very big on customer service.
Oof, we're customer obsessed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna give it to y'all. I'm gonna give it to y'all. That is something that, and on a side note, right? As we're in conversation here, like this is one of the biggest things that I look for in any business is customer service, right? Hotels, restaurants, the food could be trash, but if the customer service is good, it helps the food taste a little bit better,
Just a
right?
little bit.
And I'm
Mhm.
not gonna lie, sometimes my packages get a little crazy when they come from Amazon. Boxes look like some dog chewed it up. But it's cool. I'm not knocking it, but you know what? I could always call customer service. I could always drop the package back off at Whole Food and get another one in the next couple of days. So again, big shout to Amazon and all of the guests that that are working over there, that have been on the show. As a In your current role, like what are three qualities that you think are like necessary for like customer solutions?
Yeah, yeah. You've got to have great ownership. So what does that mean? You can't say that's not my job. So
Ooh,
that should not
ooh,
be in your vocabulary.
ooh,
Uh, yeah, you
ooh.
can't
I
say that.
like I like that.
Yeah. So
Drop that right there. That was like the mic drop.
that's number one. Number two, you've got to understand positioning. What does that mean?
Mm,
Like when you are trying to get a deal done, you need to understand who controls the deliverable that you need and who are the key players to getting that done. So getting approvals, setting up the right meetings, sending the right emails. I think this is more of an advanced skill that you learn with time. And I'm learning this from my sales contact that I work with. She's a Black woman, by the way, very rare to be working with a Black female salesperson. But positioning and understanding strategy is definitely a big one. So ownership, positioning, and strategy, and then having bias for action. So being not being what's the word when you're procrastinating? Don't be a
okay.
procrastinator. You have to, if you see something, if you can do something today, don't do it tomorrow. Bias for action. If you can do something today,
Mm,
don't do it tomorrow. Get it done.
mm,
Have
mm,
that mindset. Bias
mm.
for action.
That's simple, but could be complex.
Oh yeah.
But it's things like that that I'm not gonna lie, our parents used to talk about. Like simple stuff like that. Our parents would be like, "You can't clap with one hand," and I'm like, "What? What Caribbean father is going to tell their son you you can't clap with one hand?" I'm like, "Dad, that has nothing to do with the topic we're talking about right now." But years later, as I clap for a lot of my friends, I realized I can't really clap with one hand.
No.
But it's those little things. So you got a little taking that little Caribbean tone right there. You got to drop some stuff to make you think. It's very
Yeah.
conscious stuff you're talking about right there. Look at that. You want a remix?
Yeah.
When you're not working, like
Yeah.
I always want to know this. Like you seem like you have a very very busy life, right? You talked about also getting married as well too.
Yep.
Congratulations on that as well. But like, what is your hobbies? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? If you're not
Yeah.
even, I'm hoping it's nothing to do with math.
No, no. Well, it's a little bit related, but not directly.
Okay,
So,
talk to me.
kind Um, I want to be the Monopoly man. So when I'm not working, I'm literally building my own plan of how to become the Monopoly man. I am a real estate fanatic. I run a couple of Airbnbs.
Mm.
Uh, like, so that I love that. Like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and you want to talk about it, I'm there. But
Don't say that now. Don't say that. After this interview, I might get your number. We gonna get to talking.
I'm trying to, as people, we don't always do better when we know better. So I'm trying to do better because I know better. So what do I mean? My dad passed away from heart disease and diabetes
Sorry to hear
about
that.
10 years ago. And so I'm trying to exercise more and, be a better person physically. So I'm getting into that, trying to be as consistent as I can every week, getting in my workouts, keeping up with my kids. I have two of them.
All
I
right,
got a
that's a
3-year-old
handful
son.
right there.
I got a 3-year-old son, and I got a 4-month-old daughter.
Oh, that's definitely a handful.
Right. So, yeah, just trying to stay with family. My brother moved to Washington recently, so helping him build, helping him grow. I was kind of I do some mentorship still with the,
Okay.
um, I forgot the name of the foundation. It's kind of like the uh, Urban League in Seattle. It's not Urban League. It's related to the Urban League organization.
Mm.
So those are a couple of things that I like doing, and every now and then we'll jump on a trip and go somewhere. So last year we went to Jamaica, and
Yes. Big up.
hey, and on the beach,
You
man,
don't know secret. Where'd you go in Jamaica?
went to Ocho Rios.
Oh, yes, yes. Wicked.
Hey,
You
2 weeks later, we were in Botswana on safari.
live a good life.
Lands International. So,
That passport is stamped up. But again,
hey,
that started from that childhood,
yeah,
leaving Guyana, going to Africa. Like you
yeah.
got into once you cross the barrier from the Caribbean to Africa, I think moving to any place is easy. You're like Washington to New York. And I do that with my eyes closed now, right?
I'm slowly trying to convince my wife to make a move, but baby steps, baby steps. Back to the motherland,
Oh yeah. Okay. And
baby
live for
steps.
good. And live for good.
That place is for us. We can do magic over there. It's hard, but yeah.
Especially when you have the knowledge.
Mhm.
That is important. Like you're not just going there just to try it, right? You have the knowledge and you know what to do and how to do it. You know who to connect to. You might not know who the person is, but you obviously know the connection of that.
Right.
But I do like you on the hobbies and stuff like that. I think that real estate is always a big thing. It's a great way to bring in that extra form of income. So you always got this little side hustle thing going, and I'm paying attention to how you're moving. You're not just moving in just the hey, look, I work in corporate America. I work the typical hours. No,
Yep.
I'm working and working even after work, right? And working on those hobbies and stuff. So again, kudos to you. Your story is beautiful. Your story is
Don't stop till they call you chairman. That's how you know when to stop. Don't stop till they call you chairman.
Okay. I wasn't stopping until they called me Dr. Herman. That's what I was looking for. You know what I'm saying? Dr. Herman. Wow. I want to walk into facilities and they're like, that's Dr. Herman, the entrepreneur himself, the prince of motivation himself, right? So shout out to that. Um, as we conclude on our interview, I was saying like it's been an amazing, amazing opportunity to connect with you. I feel like we've gotten so close just with this conversation. But I want to know I something that always catches me, and I always want to know how people are going to answer this question. You have to have reached a low point in your life. doing all of this? From transitioning to corporate America to the medical field to working with Amazon right now, like there's got to be a low, right? How did you get out of that low?
Yeah. I'll take you back to 2012. Um, my dad, remember I told you my dad had medical issues.
Yep.
He was in the hospital. My mom also had kidney failure. She was in the hospital. I was working my shift, and I remember after I finished my shift, I went up to her room and I was doing my homework in her room, and she started reading. Sorry, she started helping me read my case study. Oh,
It's okay. It's okay. Take a moment for yourself. I appreciate you sharing.
sorry about that.
No, no,
Um,
no. It's okay. It's okay.
she started helping me read my case study, and I think that was when I was the lowest. And oh,
No, that lets us all know how deep this was. This wasn't just a normal day. This is something big.
yeah, she was helping me with my homework in the hospital, and like I felt like I got the worst cards in the book, and she just told me, she kept saying, if anything happens, you have to move forward. You have to keep going. And she said, just give it your best all the time. And yeah, I think just having her there in that condition, helping me, was the motivation I needed to keep going. Because I wasn't sick, but she was sick, and she still wanted to help me read through my case study and go through it. And just through her pushing through, um, kept me going.
Mm.
Sorry, why you have to make me cry in the last
No,
question?
no, no, brother, man. Like,
Ah,
the fact that you're even opening up and being, vulnerable and letting us know this story is very touching. Um, Having to see any loved one in the hospital or suffering is always a hard thing to witness, let alone your parent who has provided for you over the many years. And you have highlighted in this interview several times about how you and your mother had that type of connection through the words that you shared from that song Little Black Boy to various different other things that you had mentioned. So I could only imagine how it must have felt just being there. But it goes to show the legacy that you have in you. It goes to show how strong both your parents were and the mindset that they had providing for you to get you to where you are right now. And they will be truly honored, any parent. And even me as a fellow brother, listening to your conversation right now and hearing your journey, your story, it's an honor to be here and witness that and to listen to that. And you're not even done. You're just getting started. You're just getting started, right?
yeah,
And the fact that she was able to do that, even in her lowest, right, goes to show you how strong your family is. And the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I always know that. My father always told me that. So you're already doing that every day of your life. And now you're mentoring and coaching other individuals as well too. So it's a hard thing, but all those struggles, all those scars, mean something. And it's gotten you to the person that you are today. And again, your journey is so beautiful to watch and to listen to and to hear. And like I can only imagine what 2025 is going to look like for you in the many more years to come. And and again, thank you for just opening up and sharing that. My goal is never to make individuals, feel like they can't express themselves, especially on a just vulnerable platform that we have right here. So thank you for just opening up. Um, on a light note, like I know we're concluding on our interview. Is there any last words of advice that you would like to share with our listeners to let them know about what they could be doing to obtain, um, even if close to what you have accomplished over the many years?
Yeah. Be assertive. Be observant. Pay attention. Growing up in Guyana, even though we're a multicultural society, I looked around and the people who look like me are always at the bottom. I went to Africa. I looked around. The people who looked like me were always at the bottom. And um, I used that to observe other people, to see how other people in other communities are living. Take the good from all those communities and bring it into your own life. Just because you might not have experienced something in a certain way doesn't mean that you can't do better. You can always do better. So seek the knowledge to learn how to do better, and do it. Have bias for action. Do not procrastinate when you can get something done. Go after it. Do it like it's the last thing you're gonna do. Go after it. Do not put it off for tomorrow. Do it today. That's what I would offer to everybody.
Respect, respect. Lester, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and from my listeners as well too that are listening right now. Thank you for just again sharing your journey, your story, all the wonderful things that you're doing, um, and just being open, with this whole conversation. It's beautiful to always listen to our listeners' conversations back, or emails, or conversations saying, "Hey, look, Paul, love that last interview, right? I love the fact that they spoke about this because I'm actually going through this." So a lot of things you mentioned, I know a lot of our listeners are possibly going through, or going to be going through in the next few months, years, and you're just giving them a little bit of that little head start to know what to look out for. And I want to let the listeners know, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Lester, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect, and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts.